Hi, my name is Sierra. I'm the captain of GigaBots, and today we're going to be interviewing Ultraviolet, and they're going to go ahead and introduce themselves.
My name is Eldrin. I am on Team Ultraviolet. I've been in FTC for 5 years, and I'm glad to be here.
Okay. Hi, my name is Henry. I'm also on Team Ultraviolet. I've been in FTC for 2 years. I'm relatively new, but learning a lot.
Hi, I'm Lucas. I've also been in FTC for 2 years now, part of Ultraviolet.
So we're going to start off with the general questions. What advice can you guys give to rookie teams starting off in FTC?
I think probably one of the best things I'd say is like find what you like. FTC is such a big field. There's, obviously you have your technical, your mechanical, your hardware, software. But there's also a lot of different parts of it. Like some people like business, some people like advertising. So find what you like, stick to it, and especially work with your teammates and specialize so you can cover different roles.
What are some highs and lows you guys would say you guys have had for your teams this so far?
I can talk about that. In terms of highs, so we used to be part of a different team that was run by a school. And now being a community team, we have a lot more freedom. So we are able to manage our time the way we want and do things how we want, which has been a massive benefit, definitely. Um, for lows, let's see. I'd say having that freedom definitely can be a bad thing sometimes. Sometimes we have a procrastination problem, or similar. That's yeah, I'd say.
Another thing I'd say is like starting a team from scratch. It's very difficult to get your, for one, name out there, and another, we don't have as many connections as we did when we were a school team. So getting funding, sponsorships, grants, things like that. It's a whole new field, almost starting from scratch.
So what are some of the differences you guys have noticed in those?
I think one thing that collectively we all talked about when we started the community team was convenience and location. So obviously in a school team, you're working out of the school, you immediately after school, we'll run to the workshop, we'll do what we need to do. The meeting schedule was a lot more strict. Now things are a lot more relaxed, like, hey, are you free on the weekend? We'll go work on the robot or whatever. And I think that kind of relaxedness is helping us preventing from burning out, which was a big problem we had when we were on a school team. So definitely the schedule is one thing.
Huge benefits about having the robot centralized in one person's place is that we don't all need to go there at once because we can do a lot of our work in CAD, a lot of the design and stuff. We can do that online. And then one person, we can plan stuff, design stuff online with each other. And then we only need to meet like once a week or so to get the design in and building in.
Okay. So what resources have you guys utilized throughout the season?
For design, we are very heavy into using Fusion 360 for all our designs. Everything we do is pre-planned ahead of time in CAD, so we never have to show up and just make something out of nothing. Everything can be planned ahead. Um, it's much more efficient. You overall will have a better end result than something that's thrown together. For what other resources? I mean, we have obviously pretty much full custom metal robot. Not a lot of people have that. We fortunately have access to a sponsor that can, through a connection that lets us get free parts, which we're very thankful for and saves us a lot of money and time. So, sure if I'm missing anything.
I think like as far as external resources like online, obviously big praises to FTC Discord, something that most of our team stays pretty interconnected with. We love getting connections online. We love looking at inspiration from other robots, and it's just a great community, great space to be a part of.
How do you guys manage your guys' time efficiently?
So the thing is, we don't. No, I'm joking. I think the best thing that we kind of decided on, especially as a community team, was there's a stage of each process as we build the robot. So as at the early season, we're mainly just working on CAD. We said, all right, designers, we'll have a meeting together. Later on, then it's hardware. So your hardware people meet together, and it kind of make sure that the people who need to be working on the specific aspect of the robot at that point is there. And you don't have to worry about people saying like, oh, I don't know what to do, or oh, I'm just, I'm kind of just sitting here. So I think by guiding team attendance based on what needs to be done, that's one of the best ways we've made sure we're always efficient at every meeting.
Okay, that's all for the general questions, and now we're gonna do the technical questions. Do you guys believe there's some materials every team should have, like the necessities?
I'd say C channel. C channel or some sort of like raw building material that you can just cut up. We've run into times while designing that like Lucas, I think you can show, there they are, yeah. We've gone through a lot of different iterations of the transmission for our virtual 4-bar, or virtual double reverse 4-bar, excuse me. And it came to a certain point in the season where we said, this isn't working. We have 2 weeks left till comp, and we need to get this something that'll work. So with the few GoBuilder parts we had and little scraps of C channel, we were able to piece together a worm gearbox that we were able to use. Similarly, I think that in our past experiences, things like extrusion, Pitsco, Tetrix C channel, all great things to have lying around, especially very affordable for most teams instead of just like, oh, I'm gonna buy a 3D printer or I'm gonna buy a laser cutter. So just raw materials like that.
And if you're talking about necessary material, I would say if you can, 100% invest in at least a 3D printer, even if it's not like the teams, but for someone to have it. 3D printing is like I can't even begin to like voice how useful that is for when it comes to prototyping or even stuff like on a finished product. It's still extremely useful. I'd also recommend for needed things, or well, preferable, definitely a large supply of, or not a large, but a surplus of things like motors and servos. I'd always get a few extra of those than what you think you'll need. Servos die, motors can die, and it's also good. You can prototype easy with like say you have some extra stuff lying around, you can put something together, try out new mechanisms. And then there's general hardware like screws, standoffs, all that. So yeah.
Your guys' standoffs, you guys don't 3D print them?
No, we use GoBuilder standoffs.
Oh, okay.
I can
I
actually
think we do have a few standoffs that we 3D printed that weren't to the GoBuilder sizes. So here and there we do use it, but for the majority we'd rather use the metal because we've run into so many structural issues in the past with 3D prints.
Yeah, in terms of standoffs, especially if they're structural, very much recommend metal standoffs. We have quite a few along here. Our entire 4-bar lift is run with metal standoffs as the axles in them, I guess you could say. So definitely recommend metal standoff.
Is there a certain part of the robot you think everyone should know how to build, like different mechanisms?
Intake. I am a huge believer that every FTC game needs an intake, regardless what it is. Compliant mechanisms are one of those things that all you need is CAD and realistically surgical tubing, and you can get it working. As long as you get your spacing right, you take the 3D model of whatever the game element is on Andy Mark, put it in your CAD file, and get the intake geometry right. that'll carry you at least like 50% of the way if that intake is reliable.
Even if you don't have like a scoring mechanism, you just put an intake on there and you are immediately at least twice as efficient as a push bot. So yeah, intakes are definitely a must. Will say that a claw, knowing how to make a claw will always be useful, unless it's like a shooting game. But yeah, having something like that you can very simple, you put on anything and it'll work in most cases. Not well, but it will work. So
Did you guys use a claw for last year's game?
Well, we actually tried to go for the Vex style intake at the very beginning. That took us, I'd say like 75% of the season. We just stuck with that, and it was great for just either self-writing codes or picking them up without having too much error. About halfway or like a third of the way through, we started thinking about switching to claw for a back extension mechanism. But ultimately, our main form of scoring stuck to that Vex style intake. That being the two roller,
compliant wheels, yeah, that spin in opposite directions. Yeah, I'd say last year claw was probably the best outtake / intake.
Can you guys describe the like basic design process that you guys go through for your guys' robot?
I think like the best way I can put it is like you take what constraints, what's the problem, right? This year it's how do we get pixels off the ground and into the backboard or backdrop, and you just piece things together process by process. So we say like, how do we pick it up? Okay, intake, claw, here's all our options. As you go through each point, we just lay out ideas. And once the team agrees, we go to CAD. We split it up, so like, I'll be working on this, you'll be working on that. And we add all the subsystems into one big CAD file, make sure everything works in CAD. And then it's down to manufacturing. Once all the parts are done, we say, all right, it's build time. We'll build over the building portion is actually much shorter than the designing portion, which I think is always key. And then after that, we test. It's a lot easier said than done, that's for sure. And troubleshooting is always the hardest part along the way. But as long as you take things step by step, I think that's usually the key.
Yeah, I think ideal design process is you brainstorm as many things as you can. Never discount any idea at the beginning. Just put as much as you can up there. Narrow it down to what you think will work well, what will be good. Then you take that, you make a design out of that, like in something like a CAD program. Then make prototypes of that, test them, find out what actually works best, or either whether that be a different design or an optimized version of your original one, and then make a final product out of that.
How would you guys recommend rookie teams learn to code?
I guess I'll talk about that. That is a bit of an ambiguous question. I think it depends where you start, like who you are, what kind of coding experience you have. If you are someone who already knows how to program, whether it be in like Java or any other language, it's not too hard. I'd say you really just have to learn like what the FTC SDK gives you, which by the way, I'd highly recommend. Unless you really don't know how to program or code, don't use anything but like Android Studio and Java. You just have much more control and freedom. If you know how to do it, it's not terrible. You just kind of learn the API. But for people that don't know how to code, FTC does have their on.java and their blocks, which actually seems like a pretty sophisticated. You're learning how to program. I'd start there. start with something like that. And the way I personally find is best to learn how to program is by taking it step by step with like increasingly harder things to do. Saying like you could start with, oh hey, make the drivetrain move, then give yourself like control over that drivetrain via like a controller, and then move up to something like subsystems, or you can make things like intakes and outtakes move and all that. Yeah, that's the way I'd recommend it. Once you get a feel for like programming in general, though, as soon as you can move to something like Android Studio, just text-based is much better.
Just another like general resource. I know one of our members, he may be joining the call later, hopefully, but he's our second programmer. And he used GM0. His first year in FTC was last year. Followed all the tutorials on GM0, everything about Java, and just like the general like fundamentals. And he's been doing pretty well. I know that he's one of the types of people who likes to research everything. And for those types of people, GM0 basically has everything you'll need for that type of FTC programming from beginner to advanced.
Yeah. And if you ever need like examples or like want to understand something, there is an infinite number of public GitHubs from FTC teams out there that you can look at. Plenty of resources in that sense. That's always really good too. Can give you better understanding of how things work.
Are you guys involved in like outreach or no?
I'd say we're, in terms of outreach with like other teams online, that's probably the most outreach that we do. One of the big things this year is that we are a part of, we started. We helped start GSA, Garden State Alliance, which is a FTC server for basically everyone in Jersey. And through that, we've gotten plenty of connections. We love like seeing the people at events who we talk to online. And we've had a few online outreaches with some teams in Jersey so far. As far as professional and technical outreach, I do think that we are a bit lacking in that department, but we're hopefully getting a few more as the season goes.
Yeah, also a little harder for us since we're technically a rookie team, and none of us are really rookies. So,
How do you guys prepare for upcoming competitions? Like when you guys like a week away, the deadline's approaching.
We start taking the robot apart and redesigning. Well, sometimes, but usually around the week before, we kind of just assess the situation. I think that's one thing that a lot of teams kind of always need to take a step back, especially as things get more stressful. So we say like, do we think that what we have will be ready for competition? If not, what are we gonna do? So far we've only been to one competition so far, which was the last mid-season meet for Northern Jersey. And before that comp, we decided that we weren't gonna have our full design for the robot done yet. A few members, including myself, decided that let's compromise. We'll do a quick 3D print overnight, and we'll have a temporary design that'll stick with for this and the next competition. And then once that was set, we made sure that while we're getting that CAD done, the programmers are getting the final touches on their testing. And we were able to scramble together enough time to do some practice driving right before the meet. Obviously, that's not the ideal situation, but I think taking a step back and asking yourself, like, what do we need? Or rather, what's the state of the team and the robot? That's always going to be the best thing to do in preparation.
so once you get to the point where you're like a week away, ish from a competition is where you should, like Elvin said, take a step back and probably stop doing any major changes to anything, because that will only cause you to crash and burn. Last minute changes will always have last minute problems, which will require last minute fixes, which are always very bad. So like, you know, if it's just something like a meet, like a league meet, it's not worth killing yourself over, oh, gotta have the entire design finished. You know, if it's not, sometimes it's just worth to accept that and work with what you have. Because a lot of times you can do a lot with what you have.
Sorry. When you move out from high school, like what do you think is the most valuable thing you've learned from FTC or First Robotics?
I think, especially with what's more of a, you could argue is like more of like a team project, professional situation that an FTC team is. I think working with other people in stressful situations is always going to be a helpful thing. I know I've talked to mentors before who are in corporate, and they always say like, this is what you'll see. You have a project, you have a deadline, you have members who someone's responsible for this, someone's responsible for that. And trying to coordinate that type of effort, especially under the pressure of, you know, in our case, competition, for them, it may be their boss, it may be the company. Dealing with that type of pressure and learning to work with people is the most important thing about FTC.
Yeah, to add on to that, I would say that communication is one of the biggest things to take away from FTC. You know, you guys obviously know building a robot is not easy, and there's no such thing as a one-man team. Everyone is responsible for at least some part of the robot, and you know, to achieve some sort of success, everyone has to work together, everyone has to communicate, everyone has to work in sync. So that's something that's going to apply now, and that's something that's going to apply to future stages of life for sure.
Team building, project management, time management, biggest things.